It's Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. Digital Trends Live is about to start. Here are some of the topics we'll cover today. It's finally been announced. Apple has pulled the curtains back on the new 16-inch MacBook Pro. Luke Larson, our computing expert, will be on discussing the ins and outs of the new laptop. And in our New York studio, Jeremy Kaplan will be joined by Kika Berman of Nestle Nespresso to talk about their new Momento coffee delivery system. I wish it was here right now. So we're all familiar with plant-based meat, right? But what about plant-based ice cream? We'll cover a company doing just that as Elon Steinhardt and Thomas Brown of Eclipse Foods join the show. And also, Jared Stern was one of the writers of the Lego Batman movie, and he'll be right here to discuss his newest series, Green Eggs and Ham, which debuted on Netflix last week with a star-studded cast. We'll be talking to him and more, all coming up on this episode of Digital Trends Live. We've got a star-studded cast in here.
Indeed,
that's what I'm saying right now. Hello, everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. This is our daily show here from Digital Trends, bringing you the trending tech topics of the day, news, interviews, headlines, discussions, and more. And we're broadcasting live from our Samsung QLED 4K studio, and we are live on a number of different platforms. We're on Periscope, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, Dailymotion, YouTube, Apple News, 2 different mobile apps, a smart television app, and, of course, at digitaltrends.com/live. So wherever you're finding us, you can join in the conversation. Let us know what you think. There's a lot of tech to talk about, a lot of things we're going to cover today, and we want your opinions. That's part of the fun of this show. It's interactive. You're just as much a part of it as we are, and I appreciate everybody who's watching right now. But to start off, I'm Greg Nibbler, joined by Luke Larson.
Good morning, Greg.
You were in the tease, and then here you are.
I'm still here.
You're still here. But there is a lot going on, and
Yeah.
I know it's a big day for you. So let's get right to this here and talk about the trending story of today, and it has to do with Apple finally pulling back the curtains on the new 16-inch MacBook Pro. So, Luke, you are the expert here. There's no better person to be talking about this right now. Walk us through. Was this something that was expected or not?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. So
Okay.
we've been following the 16-inch MacBook Pro all year. It's been rumored all year.
Yeah.
But it kind of seemed like, we got into November. That's usually a strange time to announce a new product, kind of
Right.
late into the the holiday season for that sort of thing. But here we are, and they just dropped it this morning. No big press event, no grand unveiling, just a press release and a little video, and that's it.
Which is a weird way for Apple to do something.
It is, especially since this is a pretty substantial update.
Yeah.
Although it may be a little less than some people were expecting, it looks very similar to the current 15-inch MacBook Pro. So
Okay.
there are some similarities there, but obviously there's a couple of really big things that Apple is directly addressing from complaints about the current MacBook Pro.
Well, talking about the unveiling side of it, it does seem odd just because they released the Apple, the AirPods Pro a few weeks ago, and
Exactly.
and they did just kind of do that same thing, where it's just like all of a sudden, there they are.
Yeah.
Not doing the big Apple fanfare and big showcase of it. So this is what's come out, though. Again, you said it's been rumored for a long time, and addressing some concerns. So what were some of the concerns of the previous?
So the big one is the keyboard.
Yeah.
The MacBook Pro keyboards for 3 years now have had this butterfly switch keyboard. It's not only do people not really like the feel of the keyboard itself, it also had a ton of reliability issues, and over the years, every sort of issue you can imagine with this thing, and they've tried
Yeah.
to replace it, tried to fix it with little fixes here and there, and just, they ultimately had to go back to a more traditional style keyboard, which is what everyone kind of wanted.
Right. The keyboards are one of those things where you really don't want to mess with it too much, I feel like.
Yeah.
The internals of the computer, sure, change that up all the time, but that's something
It's a
that
feel
people
thing,
are
right?
used.
Yeah, it's a feel thing,
used to it.
And I think this particular it does feel strange for Apple to go back and kind of undo all the things that they've done.
Yeah, that's another typical Apple thing, right? They just make the change and then they're like, no, that's what it
Yeah.
is now.
Yeah, exactly.
You like this. This is how it is, yeah.
But hopefully this is a better keyboard and a
Yeah.
more reliable keyboard over the long term. That's what people care about,
Which is great that they're listening to what people are saying.
Yeah, so it has a 1mm travel, so it's got some actual travel there. It'll feel a little more like a normal keyboard. It'll feel more like the old 2015 MacBook Pro that a lot of people love. It also has a physical escape key now. This was a big deal for developers who, with the touch bar up there, replacing the entire function row. They don't have an escape key. It's really important for developers.
Didn't even think about that. That would get pretty annoying.
Yeah, so kind of like on opposite ends of the touch bar is now the Touch ID and the physical escape key. So
That's nice.
little change there, and then small things to the keyboard aside. That's the big
change.
switch. The other thing is the internals, because one of the other problems with the MacBook Pro is it's super thin, right? And the performance was good, but it was always limited because of that. And
You just can't pack more in there.
yeah, and they were putting really big, like monster processors in there and facing some kind of thermal limitations. So they've completely redone all the thermals. They've put in some new fans. They've got more airflow going. We'll see how that does. But I do think it'll be an improvement over the previous performance. So you've got same
Just
processors.
they weren't fast enough. They weren't.
It wasn't the
power in there.
Yeah, it was it's the heat, right?
Yeah.
Like you put a really hot, powerful processor in there, and you need some space, you need some airflow, and that's always the battle that happens in these computers. So hopefully this will be an improvement to that. A couple other things they've done: new graphics, new Radeon graphics from AMD. You can now get up to 8 terabytes of SSD storage. It's the largest we've ever seen in a computer.
8 terabytes in a
8
laptop.
terabytes
8 terabytes
of storage.
That is a lot of storage. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it'll cost you every penny you have.
Yeah.
Because that's.
I mean, at a certain point, what do you need 8 terabytes in there for?
I mean, you're 4K editing
I guess
4K video, and
you should really be storing it somewhere else.
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
Not just
probably.
taking 8 terabytes. I mean, I like the idea that it's there. I like more storage. But
Yeah.
man, 8 terabytes.
Yeah.
Just sounds like a challenge.
It's yeah, but that's the first time.
Yeah.
And then they've bumped it up to 64 gigabytes of RAM, which is also a first-time thing for them.
Huge.
So, a couple of just things that professionals are going to appreciate. And that's exactly what this computer is for. And it's super expensive, obviously. Although it's the same price as the laptop it's replacing, which is the 15-inch MacBook Pro. So you can't buy that anymore. It's been completely replaced. We didn't mention it, but it does have a 16-inch screen now.
Yeah.
Higher resolution, smaller bezels, so it kind of fits into a similar size laptop as the previous, but now it's got a bigger screen.
Yeah, just with a bigger screen on it attached to that. Well, it's pretty cool. I mean, like you said, it's a pretty major upgrade.
Yeah. I think and it's again, like, it doesn't move the ball forward in terms of some brand new innovation, but it addresses a lot of the complaints people had, and I think people are going to be a lot more happy about buying this thing now. So
What was the price on it?
it starts at $2,400.
Okay.
And then goes up from there.
Which is pretty typical, right?
Yeah, it's where it was before, basically.
Yeah. All right. Well, $2,400, and as soon as we get one, I'm sure we'll
I
have a
can't
review.
wait to test out the performance, especially, and try out that keyboard. So.
Yeah, see what the improvements are on that. Well, you can read what we know right now at digitaltrends.com. We'll keep you up to date as we find out more information. But check it all out there. That is the big trending story today with the MacBook Pro. But there's more news to talk about, and let's go to Facebook. Shocking, Facebook in the news. They seem to be always in the news. Well, this has to do with a new pay system that they have launched. And it's not Libra, it's Facebook Pay. And essentially, it's this. They rolled this out to where you can make payments through Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and Instagram, and you can pay other people and businesses across it. And this is what they're launching. This came out in the U.S., so it's U.S.-based only, as from what we know so far. But they used examples like for fundraisers, in-game purchases, like in-game purchases if you're at a game or something, event tickets, person-to-person payments, and select pages on Facebook Marketplace. So that's that, and they said this is going to roll out on Instagram and WhatsApp at a certain point. So it's technically not on those yet, but it will be. So this is what they're doing. Libra clearly is stalling, may not ever even happen. And Libra's a little bit of a different thing, but this is them putting out this Facebook Pay, and some of the competition in that would be like Google Pay or Samsung Pay or Apple Pay.
Yeah.
Those are kind of what they're going after.
Or even like peer-to-peer stuff like Square Cash or
Yeah.
Venmo, But this is a bit of a safer bet, for something like that. Going all in with like a new cryptocurrency and Libra and trying to replace banks and all that was, I think, a little more than Facebook was ready to handle. Whereas this is like, we could do this. A lot of companies are already doing this.
Well, and that's the thing. There are a lot of companies doing it. Is that something that I suppose the convenience if you're already in Facebook, maybe that will lure a lot of people. But this is where I really want to know from people watching. Is this something that you're interested in? That you've been like, oh man, I'm on Messenger all the time. This would be so much easier than having to switch to Venmo or to Square or something else.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal for Facebook Messenger because I think you could already do.
You could send
payments.
some through that,
Yeah,
right?
but I think it might be interesting with like Facebook groups, some of the things that people actually use Facebook for.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. Right.
And events, Facebook events and Facebook groups are still popular parts of Facebook that people actually use, and being able to buy something directly through there would be kind of interesting. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see what the reaction is, and again, this is just something that's rolling out now. But then it will be on Instagram and WhatsApp. That part is interesting to me, that you'd be paying through Instagram.
Yeah.
And some of the different ways they're trying to curate that and change up Instagram with, they're removing some of the likes, which is where you can't see likes for some images. They're testing that out. And then
they want to turn it into a marketplace. Basically.
Yeah.
It won't be. I think the idea of buying directly on Instagram I'm sure that's going to happen.
I'm sure that, that's something they're thinking about, where companies would just have the pictures of their products and you could buy it directly on there through Instagram. Yeah, it's one of those things with Facebook. You never know exactly what they're going for, but that's kind of one of the things that's coming out right now. So that's Facebook Pay. You can read more about that at digitaltrends.com. And we got a couple of topics here to get through before we go to our break, and then we're going to have Jeremy Kaplan in our New York studio. But speaking of paying and different tech companies getting involved, Google is now reportedly going to be launching their own checking system. Yes, checking accounts, to where Google may be offering this. So this is it's a project codenamed Cache, which it would run in conjunction with Citigroup and Stanford Federal Credit Union. So they're teaming up with banks, but they would essentially offer checking accounts next year. Now, this is according to a source, so we don't know 100% if this is going to happen, but it sounds pretty legitimate, and this is a report that was in the Wall Street Journal. And yes, they'd be run in conjunction with actual banks, but it would be Google handling a lot of the data that's associated with it. How do we feel about big tech continuing on, getting into, and that's really what it comes down to. It's Google and companies like Facebook, but I mean, Google, this is going even a little bit further, really getting into that side of things.
Yeah, it's like big banks and big tech.
Yeah.
The unholy marriage.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is kind of a response to Apple's things with the Apple Card, getting into credit cards. They seem like that was kind of like the first push, and I think they're probably going to see a lot of success with that, my guess.
Yeah. There's been a few issues with the rollout, but I think overall, they probably are.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think there's certain things about it that are really attractive. Like I think sometimes interacting with your bank is very like going back in time. You're just like, what is this?
That's true. The innovation side on that.
Yeah, like I do feel like using something like an Apple Card or like a Google checking account, like it's probably going to feel very modern and connect directly with your phone and do all the things that we kind of wish our banks would be a little bit more convenient at doing. So there's always that.
And that's true. I mean, and to that aspect, I mean, I think that's good for all of us, because you're right. Interacting with banks, and I've been with different banks, and it's always clunky. Their apps are always clunky. It's difficult to navigate and Chase. And this. I mean, I'm sorry, it is. It's true. So if there's some better ways to improve that, then that's great.
Yeah. One thing I was just thinking about is like, what if they made it a little bit easier to like take that information out and use it for budgeting apps? It's like that stuff is really clunky. Getting your information from your account into Mint or whatever you're using.
Right.
So maybe there's something there.
Well, there's more that's going to be coming out on that, and so we'll keep you up to date on that. But that's again a rumor talking about Google getting into the checking account business. And as always with this opening segment, we run up to the clock where we've got to get you all this tech news, and there's always so much to talk about on this show. The other thing, just recapping a little bit of Disney Plus. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? Disney Plus is a thing now, and there's still a lot of people having some issues with the rollout as far as actually being able to play things on there. It's getting better, but there's a lot that's going on and weird problems that are associated with putting something out this huge in the manner that they did it. However, despite that, some reports coming out from Apptopia, which keeps track of apps. Disney had over 3.2 million mobile app downloads, and 1.3 million hours were spent watching Disney Plus yesterday alone.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Pretty big.
I'm not shocked, but that especially the headline here of the Disney Plus bundle.
Yeah.
Getting Hulu and ESPN Plus in there, like that's an enticing package, I think, for a lot of people. So.
Yeah, and there's the Hulu downloads were skyrocketed, sort of ESPN Plus associated with that. So there's a lot going on there. But you can follow along with that at digitaltrends.com. We need to get to a break, but first off, Luke, Thank you, as always.
Yep.
And we have a lot to talk about here today, so a lot of great guests coming up. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be heading to our New York studio. We're going to be talking to Jeremy Kaplan about IoT Next. This was the Internet of Things convention that just took place. He was there. We've got his 5 takeaways, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit more about some of his favorite things and different insight that he got from going to this thing. So all that's coming up. Stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live.
Apollo 11, your go for separation.
TV is making history again. The groundbreaking Samsung QLED 8K.
We're here at the inaugural IoTC Next event in the heart of New York City, where a bunch of really smart people are talking about the Internet of Things, a world where everything is connected, doorknobs, smart speakers, whatever, and what that means for you. Here's 5 things we've learned. 1, IoT is everywhere. There's a nonprofit called the Rainforest Alliance that's been collecting old smartphones, connecting them to solar panels, and hanging them in the jungle. Why? To predict illegal loggers. At first they were listening for the sound of chainsaws, then they realized that bird sounds change when humans get closer. In other words, there's an Internet of Macaws that's predicting illegal logging. That's the Internet of Things. 2, IoT is everything. It's easy to think about the smart home, the devices we're familiar with, smart locks, smart washers, etc. But IoT goes beyond that. Think process innovation in warehouses. Think about stocking and retail shelves. It's a lot of different things. 3, 5G is critical for a lot of stuff. Incredibly fast speeds and incredibly low latency means a lot for a variety of different things. So don't just think about your computer getting online. Think about autonomous oil rigs. Think about jet engine manufacturing, blue sky stuff. 4, IoT requires networks, and we don't have them. Venture capitalists we heard from here agreed, don't just build a smart thing. Don't put a sensor on a piece of meat and tell me when it's time to throw the thing out. How does it integrate with the world at large? For the IoT to really work, all of these devices have to connect to each other, and that still has to be built. 5, we've only just dipped a toe in this whole Internet of Things. The most popular song on Amazon Alexa, Wheels on the Bus. Why? Because the thing that people do most with their smart speakers is still just listen to music, despite all the power packed into these things, despite all the features and functionality, which means the future is really bright and connected.
That was a lot of information very quick, but the fact that Wheels on the Bus is the most popular thing on Alexa, that is shocking to me. We have a lot to talk about, though, right now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Joining us from New York, we have Jeremy Kaplan himself. Jeremy, first off, thank you for joining us. Very excited to talk to you about what happened at this IoTC Next event and everything that you got access to. Maybe to start off, just to, maybe you can give us a little bit of insight on some of the people that you talked to and some of the things you found out.
Show. So first of all, just a quick note, this is the first show that the IoTC Consortium has ever put on, IoTC Next. IoTC Consortium, I thought they'd been around for years. In fact, only for 4 years. It sort of feels like we've been talking about the Internet of Things for, I don't know, a decade or so. This group has really only been around for a few years. And for them to actually put on a show like this quickly actually felt like a pretty good thing to me. They brought a whole bunch of really good speakers in, a whole bunch of really smart people from both the consumer side, device manufacturers like Google, like PwC, like Nestle, and then also some of the content creation companies, your Comcast, your Xfinity's, your studios and whatnot. So it was very neat in that sense. There are a lot of different people talking about a lot of different aspects of IoTC. One of my favorite things there was, of course, whenever you get access to a company like Google, you can actually get some insight from them. That's a big
right.
If. When you can actually get insights from them, I think you learn a lot. So I had a great conversation with Mark Spates, who runs Google's smart speaker division. Really fascinating guy to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of those really cool things, about an event like this. Like you said, you get access to some of these people who are really pushing the needle when it comes to IoT. And it's important to remember this is still a really new edge of technology. I mean, it hasn't been around that long. So to see how far it's come is really interesting, but also to see where it's going to go and access like that definitely has got to help. For everything that you found out here and walking through some of the big trends and themes, what was maybe one or two of them that stood out?
Well, so two things really stood out to me. After talking to Mark especially, I was really struck by how aware Google is that people aren't doing enough with those smart speakers. And I ran a poll on Twitter about this as soon as I started hearing this from Mark, asking people what they do with their smart speakers. And as you saw in the package, listening to Wheels on the Bus, what people do is listen to music. And it's kind of unfortunate that that's all you're doing when you have this incredibly powerful AI that's built in there. So what's the holdup, really? I mean, Amazon puts out a weekly information notice about the new services they've got. Google's got a slew of other things that you can do with these. Why aren't people doing more with it is really the question. And to me, I think it comes down to discoverability. It's hard to know what you can do. You're looking at a speaker, you're going to treat it like a speaker. So what Mark was saying was one of the things that his team focuses on is offering solutions to consumers. When we talk about what makes for a good product, I always say people don't want smart this or smart that. I don't want a smart door lock. I don't want a smart this or that. I want something that solves a problem for me. I want to be able to watch my dog when I'm at work. I want to be able to brew the coffee with the press of a button, things like that. So they've been looking at different routines that really solve consumer problems, which is a nice way of looking at it, approaching things. So in addition to, I think the idea is just to add one or two things onto your current habits. So yes, you're going to keep listening to music, but maybe you also enhance your smart home experience. Maybe you're also creating a routine to lock the doors and the windows. That sort of slowly building up what consumers can do, I think, is a really nice way to approach the whole thing. And so that was one of my big takeaways. The other big takeaway that I had, and was kind of a shocker to me actually, was people always say, we're at the beginning, in the early stages of an industry. It's a common refrain you hear at shows like this. And everyone said, oh yeah, we're inning one of a 9-inning baseball game when it comes to IoT. And the more that I heard it, the more I was like, well, actually, yeah, we really are. Especially from what we do at Digital Trends, we talk a lot about the smart home space. And you've got something like a Google Home, you've got Amazon Alexa, and a lot of devices that tie into that, your doorknobs, your window sensors, your security systems, et cetera. It feels like we've been talking about getting these things connected for years and years. It feels like it's pretty robust. The reality is, it's actually not very robust. And that's directly from the mouths of all the companies that make these products. Acknowledgement that, yeah, these things don't tie together very efficiently. And take a step back, smart home is really just one aspect of Internet of Things. So there were panels that I heard on how automotive works. There was a panel on security systems, there was a panel on content creation, et cetera. I moderated a panel on health and wearables, which is a great example of a space where there is exactly no connectivity. I'm wearing an Apple Watch. it doesn't really connect to the treadmill that I get on at the gym. It seems like basic functionality. Why doesn't that work? There isn't even the platform. You've got a Google Home platform. There isn't even a wearables platform for your health. So I think that there's a lot of room to develop as IoT really reaches and fulfills its promise.
I mean, that's a fascinating just discussion right there, just talking about how many devices, like you said, the marketing, I guess, of it makes sense because we all think, okay, everything's connected. I mean, they've done a really great job of that, but as it turns out, no, they're not all. And one question I had for you, and I know we're running out of time, but I had to ask this. If we're talking to all these different companies and having them all at the same place, when it comes to these platforms, do you think there's any compatibility that they could be working on, or a unified system, or is it always going to be like Google devices do Google things, Amazon devices do Amazon things, or is there any way that they can all really connect?
Well, so I had that exact conversation with a couple of different companies, because how do you build a broader platform? Is it something that only the largest companies can do, like only a Google or only an Apple? In which case, I don't even know if I want it, right? Do I really want Google to dip their fingers into everything I do? Maybe, maybe not. The problem is, we were talking about solutions, right? Consumers want a solution to something. Not a smart this or that, but an actual solution to a problem. So if you're a company making a product or a service or whatever it is, you go do your damnedest to make that thing. And you're not spending a lot of time building hooks and building platforms and integrating devices from other places. That's not something consumers are really going to see a benefit from. So unless you've got the incredible wherewithal and the incredible smarts to think 3 years from now, this product is going to be doing all of this stuff, unless you've got a team that can focus on making the best stuff and also think about that other stuff, it's kind of hard to get that stuff done. And that's really the reality, I think, of what we've talked about here. Yes, there are platforms. Yes, there are protocols. Not everyone's embracing them, and there isn't a broader company that's trying to tie it all together.
Gotcha.
So I think groups like the IoTC, the Internet of Things Consortium, really those are the people that can actually make this kind of stuff happen. So again, just the utility of conferences like this was just I think it's meaningful on a lot of levels.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's why it's so great that you were there, speaking, and we got the coverage and getting that insight. Insight being one of the key words of what's going on in this industry. And I know we need to get to a break because you have an interview coming up. So I won't hold you any longer. But if anybody wants to read more about this, check it out all out at digitaltrends.com. Check out Jeremy's coverage of that. And we have lots of coverage of smart homes, so you can always keep up to date. And we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're heading straight back to New York, where Jeremy has an interview standing by with Kika Beherman, Vice President of B2B USA at Nestle Nespresso SA. We're talking about coffee machines, and I really wish that was here in our studio right now, but Jeremy's going to get to have that conversation, so that's coming up. Stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live.
Apollo 11, your go for separation.
TV is making history again. The groundbreaking Samsung QLED 8K.
Hey, welcome back to Digital Trends. A lot of fun talking about the Internet of Things Consortium. And of course, Internet of Things means a lot of things are connected, which these days means not just watches, phones, doorknobs. It also means things like this, coffee makers. We're joined by Kika Berman from Nestle Nespresso SA. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely, Jeremy.
What's the SA mean?
It's a Swiss denomination.
It's a Swiss.
Nespresso works.
Who cares?
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about a brand new device from Nespresso. What's this called?
Yeah, so very excited to be here, Jeremy. This is our latest addition to the Nespresso portfolio. It's called the Nespresso Momento machine.
Memento.
And it's a machine designed for businesses, so whether it's for hotels, restaurants, or offices. Our goal is to make sure that everybody can enjoy an amazing, high-quality coffee experience in their environment outside of their house. And we're very proud to share a bit more today about the latest edition.
Well, let me just say, it's gorgeous. I've got one of those Mr. Coffees at home, $22. I got it at, I think, at the Target. It's terrible. This is obviously a much better experience, though. Why don't you walk us through some of the new features?
Yeah, so...
what distinguishes this from the crummy coffee maker I have at home?
Well, first of all, this is really targeted for the professional market, so we really target businesses. And the way we've looked at Nespresso Momento is we followed a lot of trends and insights, what's going on in the workplace specifically. Nowadays, when you look at how workplaces are evolving, particularly trends like future of work, we see that Gen Z, millennials are more than half of the workplace right now. We have 5 different generations working together. So that creates a very diverse and, let's say, different dynamic within the workplace. The second part is that technology has really enabled a different way of working. So historically, we would all go to the office from 9 to 5, and we would spend our day together, and every day we would see each other there.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. There's flex working, working from home, remote working. We have people who are hired just on a contract basis, temporary basis. So the time we spend together is less because of the technology that has enabled us to work in a different way together.
Sure.
And companies want to offer that because people want to have a better balance between work stuff and their life. And the third part is really linked to the importance of creating meaningful connections in the workplace. When you think about colleagues, you're just kind of brought together, and from that moment on, you need to work together and kind of figure it out. And creating moments where you can truly connect and share and build trust together are very important in the workplace. So what we see happening now is that more and more workplaces are designed around social environments within the office. And coffee is the social connector in the workplace.
You got me thinking about like a standard boardroom or a standard conference room, which doesn't feature something like this. It's just a blank space where people go and then they leave and go back to their offices.
Yeah, we want to create the exact opposite. We have conversations right now that you want to go to the coffee corner, to the coffee hub, enjoy this amazing cup of coffee, that you don't have to go out on the street to get it. It's right next to you. And that's, Momento brings you kind of different moments that you can enjoy with your colleagues in the office.
Can I try one?
Absolutely. I was waiting for you to ask that. So I'll talk you through some of the features.
Yes, please.
So Nespresso Momento has been designed around 3 main pillars. The first one is the intuitiveness. We wanted to make sure it is a machine that anybody can use. And just to give you an example, I heard you speak earlier about kind of the device at home and how Wheels on the Bus is a popular song. In my house as well. I have 3 young kids.
Of course.
And what we did is, at a certain moment, we wanted to make sure it's that intuitiveness that anybody can do it. So I brought my kids to work and I asked them, please prepare the coffee. So they instantly understood what to do. So they slided the capsule in here.
That's pretty
The
intuitive.
machine reads the capsule and prompts different recipes. So I'm going to brew you an espresso cup because I took a small cup. But the machine also recommended Americano. So it reads the capsule, and the benefit of that is it will propose the recipe that is best to make with the composition of the coffee inside the capsule. So I'm preparing for you now an espresso origin Brazil. It's a light roasted coffee. And this typically happens. We had 60 seconds to set it up in a break. So that's a classical example of things that can happen. Well, yeah, the capsule is then extracted into an espresso recipe, and it gives you also the flavor profile, the brewing kind of on side of it. So you also get a bit of education on the notes, what you're actually brewing and consuming at that moment.
So the device is reading information off of the capsules themselves.
Exactly. So the device can read the capsule and therefore understands that this capsule, the Espresso Origin Brazil, is perfect to make an espresso and Americano recipe.
Okay.
If I would have taken this one, it would have given me a different recommendation.
It sort of reminds me of Bluetooth devices where they tell other things what they can do. What
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
capable of.
And that is really where we want to make sure that we enhance the consumer experience, that you consume it to make sure you get the best possible in quality and that you don't over-extract the coffee, for example. The other thing which is amazing about Nespresso Momento is that it's a fully connected machine. So I heard you speak earlier also about the Internet of Things.
Yes, of course.
So this is, I think, a classical example of how you can bring benefits to the professional environment. Any brewing event, like we call it, or event that happens on the machine, we are able to read it.
Brewing event, I like that.
Yeah, that's kind of the technical terms that we give it. But it really allows us to see anything that happens on the machine. So what moment of the day are you brewing your coffee, which types of coffee. We can do predictive reordering for you, so we can see based on real-time consumption. We can replenish as needed.
And do you extract that data into, I bet you must amalgamate that all into you can probably tell on which coast how frequently people are actually drinking what types of coffee.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, but it really allows us to understand and tell about consumer behavior. And those insights we can bring back to our customers to help them understand this is what your people want, and we can help you get the max out of it. We can do from remotely, we can update software to make sure that new capsules, because constantly we bring new coffee to the market, that those are being recognized as well. We can do updates on the temperature, on the extraction times, anything that you might need.
Refine
to
the
make
recipe.
sure exactly you enjoy the best possible cup of coffee, and we take care of the rest. So that is how we have enabled technology as part of this platform to really make sure we bring the best possible experience to the environment.
I wanted to ask you if it connects into something like a Google Home or something like that, but the way that you're positioning this for the boardroom, it kind of exposes one of the problems that we have with modern office space, that there just isn't that level of fundamental connectivity. You know, for example, you walk into your average conference room, the doors don't detect that I am walking in.
Yeah.
The conference system doesn't say, well, Jeremy's here, let's go add him into the video conferencing system. None of that exists. So I was going to say, well, does this do this? There isn't really any of that yet.
No, there are things that we can do really to optimize the technology, and lots of things are also connected to sustainability. So, for example, the machine has proximity sensors, so we can put it in sleep mode. When you're 6 feet from the machine, it will wake up.
Well, that's
and then
great.
the moment you come closer, the screen will start again, so you can...
Probably saves a little energy, not a lot, but a meaningful amount over time.
Yeah, but that's where we really look at every single touch point in the value chain. How can we optimize? So this is one example. The other part we've looked at is how the design of the machine, we want it to be timeless. We want this to last. 10, 15 years from now, people still should think this is an amazing machine. We want it to stay there. So we had to make a design that is timeless to make sure that it doesn't look outdated. Nowadays, many devices come with big screens. The moment you launch it, a month after it's outdated. There's higher resolution, different stuff. So we wanted something very minimalistic that stays forever. Because the machine is really designed to last for the next 15 to 20 years, where only small pieces have to be replaced over time, to really ensure that from a life cycle perspective, we make the most sustainable machine that we could come up with.
One last question for you. We can't talk about a pod-based coffee system and not talk about recyclability. These
Absolutely.
pods have to be recyclable.
Yes, so I'm really glad you bring that up. So we have a dedicated recycling scheme in place. Our goal is to collect all of the capsules that people have been able to enjoy during their coffee moments. So we have
They fall inside here and get stacked up?
they fall
or
inside here. They come in here. Okay. You just pull this out. So this is kind of a recycling setup we make available for all companies. It's completely free of charge. Nespresso takes care of it. We have pre-labeled UBS bags. So once you're done, you put it in here, you drop it off. So again, we take care of that. It's then shipped to a location in New Jersey with its Egg Choice, We separate there the aluminium from the coffee. We give a second life to the aluminium. It's a material that allows you to protect best kind of the taste, the quality of the coffee. And it's the material you can give a second life to. And the coffee we use for composting to make sure we recycle every piece of it.
You know, it's funny, I ship all of my trash to New Jersey as well. It's just what I do.
Great.
That's all the time we have today, I'm sorry to say, but we're going to go out and drink some coffee for the next couple of hours, and I'm going to be up for the next couple of weeks based on all the caffeine I'm about to get. We have lots more technology coming up for you in just a few minutes, so please stick around. We'll be right back.
Apollo 11, your go for separation.
TV is making history again. The groundbreaking Samsung QLED 8K.
Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you for joining us live here every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, keeping you up to date on tech headlines. I'm Greg Nibbler. That's what we're going to do right now. So big tech's management of our data, certainly an issue for everyone. No matter what part of the platform you're on, everybody's concerned about how our data is being managed. And U.S. Senator Ron Wyden has a proposal called the Mind Your Own Business Act, which would address some of those concerns that we all have. He is here in our studio right now, and we're going to go live to them. We've got Drew Prindle standing by, so let's go ahead and toss it down to them. Drew, go ahead and
Thanks,
take
Greg.
it away.
So, like you said, I am here with none other than Oregon Senator Ron Wyden. Thank you so much for being here. I am pretty excited to ask you some questions about a new piece of legislation that you have recently sponsored. It's called the Mind Your Own Business Act. So, for the people who might not have heard of this, what's the elevator pitch? Hit me with what the Mind Your Own Business Act is.
The heart of it, there are really three parts. The first is people feel so strongly about being able to control their own data. So that is right at the center of the legislation. Second, we require companies to be much more transparent than they are, because so often the rights of the user are sort of buried in some document that is just incomprehensible. That will change. And then finally, for the first time, we're saying that the most prominent executives, the ones who are running companies generating billions of dollars of revenue, when they lie to the federal government, for example, about their privacy policy, and people get hurt as a result of their lying, that executive, somebody like Mark Zuckerberg, for example, will face personal consequences, financial penalties, and the prospect of prison time. By the way, there's precedent for that. That is in the Sarbanes-Oxley bill, the financial services legislation, as it pertains to the most powerful executives at the major financial services companies in the country.
So I'm kind of curious what the impetus for this bill was. You've been working on it for a while, but I'm curious if there was one event that you were just like, okay, we need to work on privacy legislation, or was this kind of just like the result of a buildup, and you were just fed up of over the years of all of these big tech companies?
I think to some extent, it is a buildup. In effect, what you see with respect to these massive privacy violations, and it's been one company after another, is sort of wash, rinse, and repeat. They get caught, and then there's a big apology and say it's never going to happen again, and then they announce the program, and then in a matter of months, we have yet another. So this is an effort to set out a very different set of oversight principles, of rules that will govern a very fast-growing area. And because you have so many people who are paying attention to this, I want to make sure folks understand that, for example, that last provision I mentioned, personal consequences for the executives, we are not talking about the IT person who might be in Coos Bay or Denver or somewhere else, a typical community in the United States. We're talking about a handful of executives who are the most powerful executives at the big technology, companies who, as was the case with Facebook, they basically got caught by the Federal Trade Commission. They imposed a fine. It was so modest that not only did the stock market react well for Facebook, but they had essentially more than made up the revenue by dinner time, and Mark Zuckerberg could go home and say, hey, let's get on with our life as is.
Yeah, so for those of you who are watching, Senator's referring to the $5 billion fine that was laid down to Facebook. I think it was in July of this year, which was a historically massive fine, right? It was comparatively big, but still in relation to Facebook's overall revenue, it was kind of like a drop in the bucket, right? So even though it was this huge fine,
it was a fine that did not send a message that for Mr. Zuckerberg there would be personal consequences. I guarantee you that if Mr. Zuckerberg in the future is found to have lied like he has in the past with respect to privacy issues, there would be real consequences.
So let's dig into this a little bit more. Tell me more about this do not track provision.
I think it is critically important that those who use the services of these leviathans, these big social media platforms, the services, have the option for what we call do not track, so that, for example, they can know that they aren't being tracked, that people aren't selling their data. And the way you do this requires a kind of more thoughtful approach than people have discussed in the past. For example, we saw at one of the Senate hearings, some of the senators didn't even really know how social media services generated revenue, which is largely through ads. So what we say is if somebody exercises the do not track provision, they still have to pay for services that they're getting, and we work out a special arrangement for low-income folks. I think we've struck a good balance in terms of being fair to all parties, while at the same time taking a very bold step to put users in control of their data, and they will, for the first time, know that they've got an option they don't.
So it sounds like there's going to be, you can use the regular version of the app and then they can do whatever with your data. But if you want to, you can opt into a kind of more privacy-focused version of, let's say, Facebook, for example. But if they decide to charge you for that service, it can only go up to a certain amount? Is that what you're saying?
No, people, and this was reflected because several senators in the hearings, it became evident they didn't know how these companies generated revenue. In fact, a couple asked, how do we generate revenue? Well, they generate revenue through ads. So clearly, anybody who uses one of these services gets some benefits. So they're going to have to make a payment. The question is what kind of payment. We work out something for low-income people, but they're still in control of their data, and it can't be sold or used without their permission.
So I'm rusty on the process. So you introduced this legislation it was in October, I think, and where is it now? It's I think it went to committee, the Committee on Finance, if I'm correct. What happens next? What does it take for this to move forward?
What I think we've seen in the past is that political change doesn't start in Washington, D.C. and then trickle down. It's almost always bottoms up. My sense is we are one major privacy scandal away from finally getting the political support to move this legislation.
Is that what it's going to take? It's kind of just sitting here until it gets a little bit more support?
Well, what you find is a lot of the far right, the big economic interests, the last thing they would want is a new focus, for example, on personal consequences for executives, and the option for people to have a do not track arrangement. That's what we're talking about here. This is about empowering the consumer and putting the person who uses this information in control of their own information.
All right, so this seems like something that everybody can get behind, presumably, right? Like this isn't something that's like necessarily going to be like a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's not really going to split, but do you anticipate there being any pushback of any kind? Like who's going to oppose this?
Oh, I certainly think Facebook will oppose the idea that Mark Zuckerberg would face personal consequences for the kind of behavior he is engaged in repetitively. I mean, I've already seen, people saying, "Oh my goodness, Western civilization is going to end, and where do these penalties start and stop?" And that's why I tried to give you that example. We're not talking about someone who's following this discussion and saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm the IT person at a small company in your hometown in rural Oregon. I'm going to, be going off to prison for something." This is about the biggest executives in the country and making it clear that there's going to be a new accountability that there is not today.
So if somebody wants to like follow this and keep an eye on the progression of this bill that's been proposed, what's the best way to do that?
Well, obviously it's on our website. I mean, we spell out, you asked about how do not track works. The do not track provision is spelled out in our legislation. Also, we have some, I think, groundbreaking approaches with respect to where technology is headed, like say in terms of algorithms. What a lot of people say, well, algorithms, I'm not sure really what they are. And so we've tried to take the time to explain this about automated decision making. But it's not as if when you're having automated decision making debates that you're talking about something that doesn't reflect the values of those who put it in place. So we have transparency requirements for that, and I think that's long overdue, so you can tell, for example, if there's bias and there's consideration for accuracy.
So what do you hope this is going to like in a perfect world? Let's say this goes.
I hope that this will be the baseline protection for consumer privacy at the largest companies in America, and I think that if you establish it for the largest companies of America, make it clear that there are going to be consequences when executives rip off those that are counting on having their information protected, that there's transparency, there's control for individuals. This ought to be the baseline. As you know, the Europeans have taken one approach, the Californians have taken another approach. I think this ought to be the baseline for consumer privacy in the United States. And by the way, as I was able to show at one of our open intelligence hearings, we don't have very many open intelligence hearings, consumer privacy is now a national security issue because one of the ways you put the country at risk is to gather people's personal information and use it against them.
Yeah. Well, Senator, thank you so much for coming and filling us in on all of this. It's really interesting stuff. I think it's definitely moving in the right direction. So with that, you know what? I will send it back to you, Greg.
All right, thank you very much, Drew, and of course, U.S. Senator Ron Wyden. A lot to think about with that. Definitely an interesting proposal, where it's going to go. A lot of things that we need to discuss when it comes to big data, and that's certainly something that we'll see how far it goes. I'll be interested to see what the pushback is. You can read more about it at digitaltrends.com. We need to get on with our show, though. We're going to take a quick break. We've got some great guests joining us next. We're talking about plant-based meats a lot here on the show. What about plant-based ice cream? We're going to discuss that and more coming up here in just a minute. Stick around back here with more Digital Trends Live right after this.
Apollo 11, your go for separation.
TV is making history again. The groundbreaking Samsung QLED 8K.
Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thanks for joining us. We broadcast live here every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and there's always so much to pack into the show. We have more for you, though. So we talk a lot about alternative foods. Plant-based meats are certainly something that get a lot of publicity right now with Impossible Burger and Beyond Burger and all the different variations that you have there. But what about plant-based ice cream? That is what we're going to discuss right now. We have joining us from Eclipse Foods, we have Elon Steinhardt and Thomas Bowman. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us here on the show today.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
You have such a unique history and story about this. I'm excited to talk about the product itself, but can you give us a little bit of a background on both of you? I mean, you have a tremendous experience in this field, and what kind of led you to forming this company? I don't know who wants to go first. Thomas?
Yeah, so I've been in the food industry my entire working career, a little bit over 15 years. Prior to forming Eclipse, I've worked in many Michelin stars, twice nominated James Beard Rising Star Chef, and was the director of product development at Just Foods or Hampton Creek, where I created some of the best-selling plant-based products on the market today.
And Elon, what about you?
Yeah. So previous to co-founding Eclipse with Thomas, I was with the Good Food Institute, which is the leading nonprofit in the alternative protein space. I helped start their innovation department, which essentially meant running an incubator for the plant-based space. So supporting some of the most innovative plant-based startups in the market today and helping them get started. And in that process, really got a survey of what's going on in the alternative protein world, and saw that a lot of good products were coming out for meat, like Impossible and Beyond. Good products were coming out for egg alternatives, like the Just Egg 2.0. But in dairy, there was a big lack of a product that actually appealed to the mainstream consumer. And what that means is really a product that replicates meat on a dairy on a taste, texture, and functionality perspective. So that's why we decided to start Eclipse Foods.
And so clearly you've been at the forefront of this for a long time, but talking about plant-based foods, in particular proteins, the meat, definitely it's grown leaps and bounds, and I can understand that, and when it comes to the eggs and those sides of things. But when it comes to ice cream, that seems like that would be such a tremendous challenge to match that texture and flavor and create it out of plants. Can you walk us through what some of the, I guess maybe what that path was like? Like, how did you end up being able to create this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what we've created is actually a dairy platform. We created a fully functionalized plant-based milk. So we can make cheese the way cheese is made, ice cream the way ice cream's made, using the same machines, the same that run actual dairy. We go through pasteurizers, homogenizers, plate heat exchangers, and the chilled holding tanks, much in the same way dairy is made. Where there's so many dairy alternatives out there, but none of them actually function like dairy. There's cheeses out there that are cashews, pureed with water and gums thrown in, but it's not made the same way cheese has been made for hundreds and hundreds of years. And not a single one of those dairy alternatives out there actually tastes like cow's milk. So that's kind of where we were, going the whole time. We thought it was going to take a lot longer than it did, but we actually had a great accidental breakthrough burning the midnight oil one night. We were tracking towards a fully functional dairy, but changed one processing parameter and one ingredient, and it started acting like actual cow's milk.
I can only imagine how many different experiments you went through to get to that point. Like you said, where it's just this one accidentally worked out right. So that's interesting that you have the whole platform at the very base level, making this dairy product that can then be molded into whatever you want, whether it's cheese or ice cream. So what is the actual, and this may be correct, tell me if this is a dumb question, but what is the actual plant that is the base level of this? What plants are you using?
Yeah, so that's kind of the magic behind what we're doing. Whereas a lot of the other products in the market, these alternatives rely on one or two plants, like an oat milk or a cashew ice cream. What we've done is we've actually taken a blend of plants and we put those plants together to recreate this milk. So really, really simple stuff. We're talking about like an heirloom corn, oat, cassava, potato, a little bit of oil and water and sugar. Like that's for the ice cream. Really simple stuff that you could buy at Whole Foods. And importantly, what's not in there is no nuts, no seeds. So way cheaper to produce. no coconut, no oil. Sorry, not no oil. No gums, gels, stabilizers. So a very, very clean product. So free from all common allergens, cheaper to produce, and that kind of blend of plants comes together to make this magic of milk happen.
That's great. And probably, diversifying what your base material is too. I'm sure that's probably good rather than just having that one supply like you were talking about if it's cashews or something like that. So talking about this, and I want to get into the product in particular, but before we do that, to give everybody kind of a bigger context, what are some of the advantages that you see with using plant-based products, in particular plant-based dairy?
Yeah, so we're a mission-driven company, and the reason we were founded in the first place is to create a more sustainable, healthy, and humane food system. And we believe, and reports by the UN have indicated, and basically I think the jury is pretty decided that transitioning the food system away from products from industrial animal agriculture and towards products that are either plant-based or cell-based, and us working on plant-based, is a huge step in terms of achieving better sustainability with our food system, a more healthy food system, a more humane food system. And specifically, we look at climate change within industrial animal agriculture. And a third of climate change from animal agriculture comes from cows, specifically dairy cows. So dairy is responsible for a third of that climate change. And that climate change in total is more than all of transportation combined, according to the UN. So we say, let's make dairy products that meet consumers where they are, that give consumers incredibly delicious products that are priced correctly, and products that are available everywhere. And then we can win over those mainstream consumers and really change the food system.
I love that, I mean, well, number one, that's a shocking statistic it's more than transportation combined. So that's huge right there. So taking that out, if we were to transition all the way to this. Also, I like the idea of meeting consumers where they are, because people are used to the flavor of ice cream. That's something that we're all accustomed to. So if you can meet it there, then that's a huge accomplishment on its own. So let's talk about the products that you have in particular with the ice cream. Can you walk us through what the suite of products are?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're creating a liquid ice cream base that we're handing off to kind of the flavor makers of the world, and they are making their own creations from it. And we can't be in the business of reteaching the world how to work with dairy. So we hand it off, and it's used the exact same way. They freeze it in the same machines, whether it's soft serve machines, batch freezers, gelato makers. I mean, it works across the gamut of machines, and there's no real learning curve. They use it exactly like they would a dairy ice cream base. So, Oddfellows, they have an amazing miso cherry and olive oil plum. At Humphrey Slocum, they have a Mexican hot chocolate flavor, and they created it just like they would any other flavor, using it just like real ice cream. And down the road, we'll be creating, like I said, it's a dairy platform. We'll be making cheeses and creamers, yogurts, anything you can make with dairy, we can do.
That's huge. Yeah, to be able to diversify that much on what you're able to create with this base. Well, talking about the ice cream in particular, you mentioned a couple of places where it's at. Where else can people try it? Where can they use it? And how's it being, how's it being adopted by the ice cream industry, if you will?
Yeah, so we just launched at Humphrey Slocum on the West Coast and Oddfellows on the East Coast last week. So that was our big national launch. Having a lot of conversations and going to be launching with a lot of partners soon. And so, yeah, I would say keep your eyes out. Look us up on Instagram at Eclipse Foods. We always post where we're going to be. But yeah, the whole idea of the ice cream is that if the Impossible Burger is available at Burger King, and if the Beyond Burger is available at Carl's Jr., then these places should also have a dairy-free option, either for their cones or their shakes. If they're going to, they should use Eclipse, because it tastes just like the real thing. You don't need to use any new equipment. Like Thomas said, it's just a plug and play with the dairy mix. The ingredients are really consumer-friendly and non-GMO, no gum shell stabilizers, no allergens. So the best ingredients, and then also that price point, because we're not using nuts or seeds. We can actually supply these massive food companies like McDonald's and everything like that. So very soon to everywhere. But right now, just those really high-end, amazing flavor makers in the ice cream world.
Well, I cannot wait to try it. I mean, if some magically showed up here in the studio, I could definitely say that I would try it, probably on air. Got to throw that out. I got to try. Well, I want to say thank you so much for joining us, too. And again, so everybody can follow along on Instagram and check out the website and keep up to date with everything you're doing. Congratulations. I mean, it feels like you're at the forefront of a huge breakthrough in the industry, especially with the trends right now. You're at a perfect position for that. And congratulations on that success. And thanks for being here on Digital Trends Live.
Thanks so much. It was a blast.
Awesome. All right. So really cool. Finding out about different ways that plant-based materials are being utilized. That is cool. And maybe we'll get some here in the studio. Maybe that'll happen. All right. I believe we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back. I'll have some brief news for you, but we have a great interview coming up. We're going to be talking about Green Eggs and Ham, the new show on Netflix. We have the showrunner who's joining us here on the show in just a few moments. So really excited about that. If you have questions, make sure you drop those in on whatever platform you're on. Let's go to break. Back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live.
Apollo 11, your go for separation.
TV is making history again. The groundbreaking Samsung QLED 8K.
And welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you for joining us. Appreciate everybody who joins the show. We broadcast live every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, all of that. And we're interactive, so thanks to everybody who drops in your comments. Let's bring you up to date on some more technology right now, some cutting-edge things that are happening. And this is one that I know a lot of you out there will probably be excited about. It has to do with Minecraft Earth. And there's a couple of reasons that we're talking about this, but the big one right now is that it is rolling out to early adopters to the United States. So it's been out in a few different countries already, but this is the big new Minecraft mobile game. It's available on Android and iOS. You do have to have already signed up for the early access side of things, but what it means is now those people can start playing it, and you're probably going to see a bunch of people a la Pokemon Go when it launched, running around like this, especially as it starts rolling out to the masses. There's a few things with this. It's a little more advanced than what we had with Pokemon Go. And obviously Minecraft is huge. It's very popular. If you've watched this show before, I'm not a big Minecraft fan, but nonetheless, I understand. I understand everybody else is. That's why I'm talking about it. So with Minecraft Earth, it's one of the latest and biggest pushes for augmented reality gaming. And that, I think, is going to be a huge, huge marketplace going forward. And that's why this is a really big push. So when you take a game like Minecraft, you add in this augmented reality element. This is going to bring that idea, that platform, to a lot more people. So you can see right there, that's kind of how it would look. It really is overlaying standard Minecraft things onto everyday life. You can do it as the board game style. They showcase that. You can do it out in the wild where you have like different places you go. Maybe it'll be kind of like the Pokemon Go places where you'll have something that's set that everybody joins up at, and then you see everybody staring at their phone, kind of like these people are. And it's pretty, as far as the platform itself, it's pretty cutting edge technology. Now, so far, even with some of the games that we've had so far with augmented reality, they haven't been this big of a push. So this thing's obviously had some success. If they're starting to roll it out and out of more countries, it seems like Microsoft is having more confidence in it. But this could be a big first step for more and more of this, and I am all for that. I mean, we see a lot of different tech companies working on augmented reality, whether it's Google, even in search, they're gonna have more. You have Samsung with their phones. Apple's working on a bunch of augmented reality, even glasses. So this is something we're gonna see more of. That's why this is a definite trend in technology, and pretty cool, the fact that it's rolling out. Am I gonna play it? Maybe not. But I do think it's a great push on that. I'll be honest. Well, I probably will. I just won't tell anybody. So Minecraft Earth, that is something that's rolling out now. If you're one of the early adopters, you can try that out in the US and check out more about it at digitaltrends.com. Keeping you up to date on technology. Let's do a couple more stories here, and then we've got our great interview that's coming up. We're going to be talking about green eggs and ham. Very excited about that. Before we get there, though, let's talk about different ways of travel. Now, we hear a lot about flying cars, air taxis, drones you can ride in, but what about flying motorcycles? There's a company called Jetpack Aviation that is working on just that. We knew they had announced this earlier this year, and that's a prototype of what they're actually looking for. So it looks essentially like a ski-mobile that flies. I mean, that really is what it kind of looks like. And there's a few different versions that they're working on. And Jetpack Aviation has just raised $2 million, and that's the big announcement, $2 million to help fund this, because that's something they've been lacking, is making sure that they have funding to actually build this thing. They believe it's viable. And I know we did have some videos kind of showcasing it, and we have some at Digital Trends as well that showcase what this thing could look like. And that's what's really fascinating about it. So there you go. They've put together a pretty slick presentation. And that's not the actual one, but this is what it could look like. So they're calling this thing the Speeder, which is a perfect name to go along with it. The Speeder, taking some Star Wars reference there. It weighs about 230 pounds. They said that it could reach over 150 miles per hour. I don't know if I would trust going 150 miles per hour on this thing. I mean, obviously soaring over the city, you can only imagine what kind of hijinks somebody could get in, but they're saying the operating ceiling is 15,000 feet. This is not an electric vehicle. This is it's based on jet fuel because they want that thrust. They said you could go about 30 minutes on it. And they will have the recreational versions, but then the military side of things is another one with a military version and also a cargo version that would autonomously fly next to you. They said it could be either something that there it is, showcasing an autonomous other jet motorcycle flying vehicle. I don't even know how you'd work that. The Speeder. So that's what they're working on right now. It's pretty interesting stuff, though. Cutting edge technology. Let's take a look at that. I don't know if I'd ride on it, but I'd want to see somebody else ride on it first, but then I would definitely give it a shot, I think. All right, you can check more about that at digitaltrends.com. And final story here that we want to talk about, and then we are going to be having our interview. So let's talk about McLaren. McLaren, they're kind of high-end sports cars. I don't know if you know about this. For a mere $1.7 million, though, you can pick up something new from them. And it's not the fact that I'm talking about an expensive sports car. It's actually the tech behind this is what I wanted to get into. And the tech side of things is the fact that this car has no roof or windshield. No roof or windshield. So it's completely exposed to the elements, and the way it creates that windshield and protects you in there is that it has essentially an air windshield. It directs air that will actually protect the people in the car. Once you get over 25 miles per hour, it kicks in. It's called the Active Air Management System. This is part of the McLaren Elva car. It's based on one of their 1960s sports cars. But the air actually pushes over and creates a protective bubble with no actual windshield. That side of things is pretty fascinating. You know, I don't know if it would, I guess it would deflect bugs at some point if you're going fast enough, where they would just zing off of that. But the idea of being in a completely open air vehicle going 60 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour or whatever with just an air windshield is pretty fascinating. So they unveiled that. You can read more about it at digitaltrends.com. Definitely an interesting use of technology. All right, let's continue on here with Digital Trends Live. And again, we broadcast live here every single weekday. I want to remind everybody of that. And when we like to bring you all kinds of interviews and discussions. And I think we can all admit here we watch a lot of streaming television. Let's just be honest with that. We all do. And Netflix is certainly at the forefront of all of that. And right now, we have an amazing guest. There's a new show. It's called Green Eggs and Ham. It's on Netflix. And we have the showrunner and creator. It's Jared Stern. Jared, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'll admit this. I watched the first episode actually today. It's so good, and I was amazed though when you hear about something like a Dr. Seuss book being turned into a series, and especially something like Green Eggs and Ham. It's 50 words. That's it. How do you do that? What was the process like of taking something that's 50 words and creating an entire season of television about it?
I had the exact same reaction that you did when they first brought it to me. Some great producers I'd worked with before. They knew I'd worked in animation as a writer before, and they said, "Hey, what do you think about turning Green Eggs and Ham into something?" And I said, "That book is perfect. You can read it very quickly. There's only 50 vocabulary words in there." But it was my favorite book as a child. When I told my grandmother I was working on this, she said, "That was your favorite book. You used to read it to me all the time." Which I love because she said I read it to her, not the other way around, because I learned to read reading this book. I had vivid memories out of all the Seuss books. This was my favorite. So I said I have to at least think about it. And the way I thought about it was I read the book. It's quick. And so I got it and I started flipping through and I thought, oh, wait a minute, it's a classic odd couple story. A mismatched buddy, a grumpy guy who doesn't want to try something new, a silly guy who wants to try something new and maybe wants a friend. And then not only that, it's a road trip because you won't try them here or there or on a car, on a boat, on a train. So I said it's like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's like Midnight Run, some of my favorite movies. And so that's kind of what got the idea started.
Well, and that's amazing that this was the book that you basically learned to read on, and now you're creating the series on it. That's got to be kind of a strange feeling just in its own right. But talking about something like Dr. Seuss, was there any trepidation or nervousness of turning that into something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love all of his stuff. Like I said, I learned to read on it. I like how his tone is so hard to live up to. His stuff is smart. It's funny. It's weird. It's subversive.
Right.
Yeah, so it was challenging.
Well, it turned out amazing, and there's a number of reasons it is, and I want to kind of talk about it, some of them. With the animation side of it, the animation is beautiful. It's kind of that classic style, but it's really incredible. And I wanted to ask for your side, you're writing this. How much did you envision when it comes to the animation side? How much did you work with the animators, or was it more present it to them and then see what happens?
Yeah, so usually in television, you record the actors' voices first, and then storyboard artists just kind of storyboard whatever has already been recorded, and they don't have too much leeway because television has to move quick. We took 4 years, which was more like how you make an animated feature, which allowed me to really work with the story artists and animators and to iterate multiple times like an animated movie. So we'd have great ideas in the scripts, but then that would inspire something in them, and then they'd come back to us and go, what if it was this? And then I'd rewrite something and I'd re-record it. So there was a lot of back and forth, and I think that's part of why it's so successful.
That's got to be a great feeling too, to be able to do that and have that freedom. Like you said, it's 4 years, so you can tinker with it. You can be like, oh, this is great, and work with it on both sides of that. I know that you have, incredible team. I want to talk about the acting here in just a bit, but even on the producing side, executive producer, one of them is Ellen DeGeneres. How did she get involved, and did she have any advice for you going through this process?
So the guy who runs her company, Jeff Kleeman, was one of those first producers who brought it to me years ago, and he runs her company, and she's just sort of a perfect fit with Seuss. I think just her vibe in general, she kind of serves a similar function in some ways. I think she's funny and weird and not afraid to be a little bit dark, but it's perfect for families. And so, I think tonally, working with Ellen and her company, that was always a way to kind of keep in mind who our audience was. I really wanted to make something that was for everyone, the same way that she does. That can be witty and smart, but that a family could watch together.
Right, something that everybody can take something away from, and that's such a hard thing to do, and you've nailed it, with this, where everybody can have a little bit that's coming out of it. And one of the other things I wanted to talk about too is the acting staff. Oh my God, you have some of the best names working right there on this staff. I mean, it's a huge staff that you have with this thing. Just walking through some of the names: Keegan-Michael Key, Diane Keaton, Eddie Izzard, Jeffrey Wright, Jillian Bell, John Turturro, Tracy Morgan. I mean, it goes on and on. When you were walking through this, how did you figure out who you wanted to cast? How did that go about? And how did you select some of these actors for these specific roles?
Sure. So, I mean, we got very lucky. Those are amazing performers, and they're funny. They're really talented actors, and they're forgetting about just being silly. But when we're picking voice actors, we really try hard not to worry so much about how famous they are. That's a nice bonus. They help promote the show. But we would shut our eyes or look at our character designs for the characters and listen to stuff that they've done before. Listen to something funny, listen to something sad, and just see, does this voice fit right with this actor, with this character? And are they going to be the best person to be Sam I Am, as opposed to, do we love this actor? And sometimes a great actor who you love so much, and you go, oh, that's the perfect person for this part, and you listen to their voice and they're not. So I think we got really lucky and had super talented people, but their voices are exactly right for these characters.
Well, in talking about that, two of the main characters, Guy I Am and Sam I Am. Guy I Am played by Michael Douglas, which is really fascinating, and he's great at it. Adam Devine being Sam I Am, and that interaction between the two of them is so good. Did they record at the same time? Like, what was that process like?
So I wish they did. It would have been fun, but they were both so busy and have such different schedules, and they live in different places. And I would record. Adam was shooting a movie in New Orleans. We'd go to New Orleans. Michael's in New York. We'd go there. And sometimes we do stuff remotely, just like we're doing this conversation right now. So we were never able to get them actually in the same room. But it's a testament to how amazing our whole crew is, particularly our editors, that they're able to pick takes. If we had one actor improv something really fun, then we'd have to go back to the other actor and then have them improvise with something that they're not there for. And then editors make it so seamless. It feels to me like they're in the same room. And honestly, that's the way you do live action movies too. You shoot one actor's coverage of the other guy's shoulder, and then you turn it around. You're not actually using the same takes. So you're able to cobble together an amazing performance that feels like people were standing right next to each other when they never were.
Yeah, I mean, it worked. I mean, I assumed they were there working off of each other like that. So that's just incredible. I mean, it speaks to them as well. I mean, the great actors that you've had with this.
Yeah, they have to put the other actor's voice in their head and get there emotionally. Absolutely.
What's the reaction been like so far?
From the actors?
Yeah.
I think hopefully, they have to put a lot of faith in you through this process over 4 years, and they had no idea kind of how it was going to end up. When you make the live action movie, you kind of know what that scene is going to be. So they put a lot of faith in us, and I thank them, and the reaction has been great, and maybe a little bit of relief, like I had no idea how this is going to turn out, and wow, not only was it not terrible, but it's actually not so bad, it's pretty good. So that's kind of been the reaction.
Well, you've been able to work on such, amazing franchises, the Lego Batman. I mean, you've got now Dr. Seuss under your belt. Is there any other franchise? I guess let's go to Dr. Seuss first. Is there another Dr. Seuss book that you would like to do this with now that you've seen success in this side?
Oh, I mean, I love so many of them. I'm actually producing a Cat in the Hat movie for Warner Brothers right now, which I'm really excited about. I love that one, and obviously people have worked on it before, but hopefully we have a kind of a new, different angle for that one. And in terms of other franchises or beloved properties, I would really love to do something in the Ghostbusters universe, and I've actually written a script that's in the Ghostbusters universe that I hope one day sees the light of day.
Nice. You probably can't tell us anything about it, I would imagine, but is it working on originals or a different version of Ghostbusters?
It takes place in the same universe as the original movie, but in a completely different time and with completely different characters, I'll say that.
I want to see it already, so that needs to be greenlit. Well, Jared, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here on the show. Congratulations on the success, and I really mean that. It's a phenomenal show. It's beautiful, with the orchestra even in the background too. I mean, it's just a really, really well put together program that you created, and you should be definitely proud of that. And thank you very much for joining us here on Digital Trends Live.
Well, it's 300 artists worked on it. It's a testament to them, and thank you so much for having me.
You bet. All right, well, that's fascinating, and that's something that's really cool we just got to do right there. So talking about green eggs and ham, I mean, and he's right, it's a huge staff that's working on that too, but that takes a lot of work to create some vision like that and have that come to fruition. Really fun, and this is what we get to do here on Digital Trends Live. We get to talk about fun technology, fun programs. It's a wide gamut of things that we cover here every single day, and we're live every weekday, 9 in Pacific, noon Eastern, so I want to remind everybody of that, keeping you up to date. And so since we're live, we can be interactive, so we can see comments that come up there as we go throughout the show, but we are live here every single day, and we bring you all kinds of different news. And with that, we're actually going to be back here tomorrow. Surprise, shock. So tomorrow on Digital Trends Live, we'll have Caleb Dennison. He's going to join us in the studio to go over some of the TV jargon you might encounter when you're out there looking to buy a new 4K TV. You're like, okay, what is quantum HDR? What's direct full array? What's backlighting? Well, we're going to talk about some of that jargon, and he's going to break it down for us to make it really easy to understand. We're going to have Gerard Danet from XJet. XJet's a 3D additive manufacturer that'll be on, and they'll be on discussing how 3D printing is actually helping to enable the proliferation of 5G networks. And they're putting a ceramic antenna that wasn't even possible a few years ago. So some of the advents of 3D printing really cool. We have Karen Panetta of the IEEE on to talk about the recently unveiled Generation AI study and how millennial children are growing up in the age of artificial intelligence. Definitely an interesting study there, and we'll have, of course, all kinds of breaking technology and probably robots, because I like to talk about robots on this show. So wherever you are, wherever you consume content, we go live every single morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Thanks for watching. I'm Greg Nibbler. We'll be back tomorrow with more Digital Trends Live.